So our freshman year of high school, we were all the freshmen were required to take an English class. And a unit of that English class was a creative writing section. And so throughout the course of that quarter, semester, whatever it was, we had different assignments. We had to write creatively about different things. And one assignment in particular always has stuck in my mind. We had to pick some sort of boring, ordinary, everyday activity and then describe it in a very creative way. And so I picked making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But truth be told, I did not put much effort into that piece of writing. And it showed because when I got it back a few days later, the teacher on the top had written in big red letters, "This is uninteresting writing." And so Mrs. Sackenheim made me do that assignment all over again. And sometime I'll tell you stories about Mrs. Sackenheim that are funny. Why do I bring that up? Well, as you stood up and you started listening to Matthew chapter 1, verses 1 through 17, what was going through your mind? Did you get to verse 3 and think to yourself, yeah, the Packers and the Broncos are on a 225 today, and it's going to be a big game. Then about verse 8 or 9, you're like, and I think Jack's has bottomless mimosas for brunch on Sundays too, right? And on verse 16, you thought, he's still talking, and he's still reading these names. Are you serious right now? Pastor, this is some very uninteresting writing. Get on with it, right? Get to something with some meat. Get to some action. Get to some narrative. This is not very interesting writing. Or imagine you're Matthew, right? And you're one of the 4. The history of the world, there are 4 people that were selected to write down the life of Jesus, and Matthew's one of them. And so he gets his parchments, and he's got his pens, and he fills them with ink, and he sits down at his desk, and he's like, okay, God, here we go. And God says, all right, Matthew, here it is. The beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Abraham was the father of... Really? You realize I'm going to have the part that everybody's going to skip over when they're reading the Bible. You know, because if you read the Bible, you get all those names. You go to the book of Numbers. Anybody read the book of Numbers? I'm studying the book of Numbers right now. You know what's in the book of Numbers? Numbers. Good guess. Because it's a census. They're taking multiple censuses in the book of Numbers. And so there's a lot of names and a lot of numbers. And so when you're reading the Bible and you get to a section like this, you might be tempted to say, I'm going to pass over that, skip over it. It's okay. I'm sure it's important in some way, shape, or form, but I'm going to get onto something exciting that Jesus does. But this morning, I hope as we investigate a few of these verses, you're going to change your tune about Jesus' genealogy. You're going to not look at it as uninteresting writing, but hopefully at the end of this, you're going to say Jesus' genealogy is some very interesting news for all of us. And so to unpack this a little bit, why is the genealogy in there? What does it matter? You and I have to look at this genealogy through the lens of ancient people, okay? So today, if you know anything about your genealogy, where you came from, if you do the whole Ancestry.com thing, or if you're big into family trees, usually as Americans, when we gather that family history, it's just to have the information. We like to know about our second, great-great-grandfather when he came over on the, whatever ship that was. Or look at this relative who fought in this war, and you learn things about that person. Or you discover, I have a cousin that actually lives on the other side of town. I never even knew that person existed. This is amazing. As Americans, we're very individualistic. We're not very family-oriented, as the ancient people were and as other cultures were. This genealogy is not just a list of names, it's actually the resume. So in modern society, if you want to promote yourself, if you want to let people know why you are valuable, why you are worthwhile, if you want to let people know why you should be accepted into this university or you should have this scholarship, you are going to fill out a resume and write essays and different things that show all of your accomplishments. You're going to write down all the things that you have achieved in life. And if you're going to apply for like a scholarship or get into a college, you're going to ask people to write letters of recommendation for you. And I would imagine that you're not going to ask your worst enemy to write a letter of recommendation for you. Right? You're going to ask people that you trust, that know you, and whose opinions about you would be valuable and accepted. That's what an ancient genealogy is. It's what you would put out for public view to let people know, these are my credentials, this is where I come from, this is who I am, and this is why you should listen to me. Look at all these people that have come before me, and this is why I'm of this royal position, or why I'm in this noble birth, or why I should get this government job. Look at all these people that I'm connected to. And so if it's going to promote you, if it's going to be a thing that's going to advance your career, and this is why people should listen to you or value you, you're probably going to include in your genealogy only those names that would be helpful for you. So if you have your genealogy and in your past, the 13th Earl of Gloucester was your second great uncle. And everybody knows that the 13th Earl of Gloucester was just a real scumbag, and he slept around, and he was a thief. You're probably not going to include the 13th Earl of Gloucester in your family genealogy. You're going to cross him out, you're going to cut him out, and it's not part of the family. And so as we look into Jesus' genealogy now, with that in our mind's eye, let's look and see the people that he's included. Let's see the people that Jesus is associated with. Let's look into the past and see the family from which Jesus has descended. And I think we're going to learn a lot about Jesus. We're going to learn a lot about his character. And we're going to learn a whole lot about what we mean to God. Let's take a look at those few verses that I put down for you. Verses 3, 5, 6, and 10. Okay? Verse 3 says, Judah, the father of Perez and Zerah, whose mother was Tamar. We'll stop there for a moment. So this takes us all the way back to the time of Jacob. Judah is one of the 12 sons of Jacob. And Judah has twins with a woman named Zerah. But when you go back and read the story, it's not just as simple as a guy married a girl and they fell in love, and they had twins. Tamar is Judah's daughter-in-law. And after she was done mourning the loss of her husband, she put on clothing of a prostitute nature, and she went out and stood on the side of the road because she knew Judah was going to be there. And so she propositioned her father-in-law, and he slept with her and got her pregnant. And then the next day, then whenever they found that out, she went and said, "Hey, Dad, guess what? You're the father. I was the prostitute you slept with." You go to verse 5. We hear about Salmon, father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab. Rahab, we meet her in the book of Joshua, the very beginning. The Israelites have crossed the Red Sea, and the first city that they're going to attack is the city of Jericho. And before they attack it, God sends 2 spies into the city to scout it out. The king of Jericho finds out that there are 2 Israelite spies in his city, and he finds out that they're in the home of Rahab. And so he goes and he asks Rahab and so on, and she denies it and so on and whatever. Saves the spies. When you get to the New Testament, you find out that Rahab was a prostitute. And more than that, more than likely, she was probably the matron of the brothel that was in her house. When you get to verse 6, we meet Boaz, who's the father of Obed, whose mother was Ruth. Ruth is a Moabitess, so she's from Moab. Moab is a country that's to the southeast of Israel, as you're looking at the map. And for all my non-Hebrew scholars out there, the name Moab means from my father. The man, Moab, was all the way back to the time of Abraham and Lot. When Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed, and Lot and his wife and his 2 daughters fled Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot's wife turns around and looks at the city, and she's turned into this pillar of salt. Well, then Lot and his 2 daughters, they go and they hide in this cave. And the daughters think, we're the only people left alive on earth. And so we've got to start procreating. And so they get their father drunk and they sleep with him. And Moab is one of the sons of Lot, from my father. And the reason that Ruth is part of the family tree of Israel is because during a famine, a woman named Naomi and her husband, her 2 sons, they went to Moab to get away from the famine. And then the 2 sons married 2 Moabite women, which God did not agree with. God does not allow marriage between Jews and Gentiles. And then the husbands die, and Ruth goes back And now there is this Gentile woman who has to live with her widowed mother-in-law and survive in a country she does not know, Gentile living with the Jews. And then we get to verse 6. We hear about David. He was the father of Solomon, whose mother had been Uriah's wife. So we have David and he has Solomon, right? But notice how God inspires the mother's name to be put in there. He doesn't put the mother's name, not because he doesn't like her, not because she's not important, not because he doesn't agree with her, or he's got it out for her, or whatever. Her name is Bathsheba. But God inspires it this way to remind us that Solomon's mother was at one time Uriah's wife. You remember that day when David was on the roof and he looked across his palace and over the palace walls, and he saw a house, and there on the roof of the house was a woman, and she was in the bathtub bathing. And she was beautiful and she was attractive, and so he had a servant go get her and bring her back, and he slept with her, and they had a baby together. Come to find out that this, which he knew, this was the wife of one of his personal bodyguards, Uriah. And then David schemed to try and get rid of Uriah so that it wouldn't look like anything nefarious had happened, and then he has another wife and a baby with a woman who's not his wife now. That's that line. And then we get to Hezekiah, the father of Manasseh. Manasseh is the father of Amon. Hezekiah is a cool guy. Hezekiah was king in Jerusalem in the 700s. Isaiah was the prophet at the time. And the Assyrians come and they invade Israel from the north, and they're coming down. And then the Sennacherib is the king of Assyria. Look this up sometime. Just if you like history, look this up. Sennacherib and his all the things that he did to destroy Israel. But he goes and he surrounds the city of Jerusalem. 350,000 Assyrians are there. And Sennacherib, we actually have a letter. We have the actual letter that Sennacherib wrote to Hezekiah. And he says, Hezekiah, I have you trapped like a bird in a cage. You're not going anywhere. So that night, Hezekiah prays to the Lord and to save them. And that night, an angel of the Lord shows up and kills hundreds of thousands of Assyrians in the Assyrian camp, and they go home, which is really cool because Sennacherib's letter gets to Jerusalem. He says, I have Hezekiah trapped like a bird in a cage. And he doesn't talk about the destruction of Jerusalem. He just goes on, and then we did this, and then we did this, and then we went home. Because of Hezekiah's faith in his prayer, God saved the Israelites that day. Hezekiah was he's kind of king that God really wants. A man after God's heart, a guy who restored the worship of the true God. But then he has a son, and his son's name is Manasseh. And Manasseh couldn't be any different than his father. He put up all the false idol altars again. He reinstituted all the pagan worship. He was so into pagan worship that he took his oldest son and sacrificed him in the fire to the pagan god Molech. And then legend has it that when it was all said and done, and he got sick of hearing from the prophet Isaiah, Manasseh had Isaiah sawed in half. That's just scratching the surface of Jesus' genealogy. What do we find in Jesus' genealogy? We find a lot of people with a lot of bad things in their past. We find a lot of people that have a lot of baggage, some not so good people, kinds of people you may not want to associate with, and don't want to be around. You've also got 4 women mentioned, which in that ancient patriarchal society, that would get you nowhere. You wouldn't mention the fact you're related to some woman. That doesn't help you achieve anything. Women had no rights, no voice. You would just get married and have kids, and that was the end of it. And so to include 4 women in your genealogy is not going to advance your agenda. It's not going to help you or give you any value or credibility. In society in that day and age, they would have been considered worthless. And then on top of that, we didn't look at the rest of the names, but all the rest of the names in Jesus' genealogy, and let's just say, not all the people of Jesus' ancestry are included there. Matthew, I think, he wanted this like beautiful 14, 14, 14 symmetry thing. But all the other names that are mentioned there, they're found in the Old Testament. They're named, but for the vast majority of them, that's all we have. We just have a name. These are real people. They have families, they have friends, they have likes, they have dislikes, they have favorite football teams and football teams that they hate. They had favorite restaurants and not. They had hobbies they liked to do, and they had streets that they lived on. They had houses. They had a certain kind of decor that they had all kinds of things, and we really don't know anything about them. I had a funny little story this week. Driving the kids home from school, and Ellie's got all these the kids get these little trivia nuggets in school of this or that. Dad, did you know? Found out this week that there's a baby born every 4 seconds. And so our drive home, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, a baby was born. And then Kieran said, I want to meet everybody in the world. I said, okay. How many people are there in the world, Dad? I said, 8 billion. Okay. Which means absolutely, 8 billion means absolutely nothing to him. It probably means nothing to us too, right? But then it just got me thinking for a moment, because I was studying this text at the time, driving past these streets with these houses, and there's people, and we don't know most of them. They're living their lives. I told the kids, just think about it. There's all kinds of people doing these things. They're living life right now, and we don't know them. All these people in Jesus' genealogy, we don't know much about any of them. In fact, as you look at Jesus' genealogy, you might say it's filled with a lot of nobodies. A lot of people that were just faces in a crowd. A lot of people that you maybe didn't want to be associated with. And yet now, because they're part of Jesus' genealogy, who are they? They're somebodies. Who knows all these people? Who has the hairs of these people's heads counted? Who knows them inside and out? God does. Who knows about all their baggage? Who knows all the past and the dirt that these people carry along with them? God does. And there's a really cool passage when you get to the book of Hebrews. Hebrews chapter 2, verse 11, talking about Jesus. It says this, both the one who makes people holy, so that's Jesus. He's the one who makes us holy, forgives us, declares us innocent, right? The one who makes people holy, and those who are made holy, you and me, Jesus' genealogy, they are of the same family, so that Jesus is not ashamed to call them brothers and sisters. They're the kinds of people that Jesus is descended from. Kind of looks like the people that Jesus was always associated with during his ministry. People that were nobodies. People that society didn't care about. People that were faces in a crowd. People that nobody knew much of anything about. But because of Jesus, they were somebodies. And now in Jesus' genealogy, we see a bunch of nobodies become somebodies. Because what's really neat to look at is what the effect of being in this line had on these people. Judah repents of all this stuff. And he becomes the one who in fact speaks up for his brother later on, his brother Joseph. He's the one who goes to bat for his brother Benjamin when Joseph is going to have Benjamin executed. He's the one who speaks up as a representative, as a little type of Christ. Rahab, when she finds out that the Israelites are coming, she says, I know who you are, and I know who the Lord God of Israel is, and I believe in him. I want to be in his family. I want to be with your people. And when the whole city is destroyed, Rahab and her entire household are saved, and they become part of the family of God. And then Ruth. Oh, you've heard Ruth's words before. Sometimes they're included at a marriage ceremony. Ruth chapter 1, verses 16 and 17. Naomi's trying to leave. Say, Ruth, just go back to your people. Your sister-in-law, Orpah, she's gone back. You just go back. And Ruth says, where you go, I will go. And where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Far be it from me. May God deal with me ever so severely if anything but death would separate us. And even Manasseh, as bad as he was, when it was all said and done at the very end of the day, repented and came back to the Lord. Because being around Jesus changes things. It turns nobodies into somebodies, which is really cool to think about. Maybe you consider yourself to be a nobody. You're all alone. It's just you. You've got some activities that you go to here and there, but maybe you think about yourself and say, I'm just not very interesting. No, not many people talk to me. I'm not as influential as I used to be. My kids will call periodically, but by and large, I'm a very uninteresting person. Or maybe you're the person who does carry around with you every day baggage like Rahab or Ruth or Manasseh or David or Bathsheba, all those people, right? All kinds of baggage with you. And you put it down and then you pick it up again. You put it down and you pick it up again. And your past is with you. Or maybe you just feel very uninteresting because you're like a face in a sea of faces. You get up in the morning and you make the breakfast and you put the lunches together and you're another car in the pickup and the drop-off and pickup line and you go on to your errands, or you go to your job, and then you go to lunch and you pick up the kids, and then you take them home and you make dinner and you go to bed. And we get up the next morning, we do the same thing all over again. And there you are up and down Indiana, just another face in the crowd of faces. There you are at Supers, just another face down the aisles. Dear friends, do not think of yourself as nobodies. You're not uninteresting, because through Jesus Christ you are somebody. You are known by the Almighty God. You are saved by the life and death of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. Think about that. All the baggage has been forgiven. You are known inside and out by God, and He loves you with an everlasting love. He is your advocate, your guide, and your comforter. He is not ashamed to call you His brothers and sisters. He doesn't look at His family tree and say, no, we're going to put you on the black sheep column. We have an addendum for you. We're going to put it at the very, you're going to be a footnote in the back of the family tree. You're not a footnote in Jesus' family tree. You are right there, connected to Him by faith. And you know what that means, dear friends? This is some really good news. Not good advice. And the reason I say that is because the way this is written is not a fairy tale. Right? Remember back in the 70s when that movie came out, sitting there in the darkness, all of a sudden, black screen, and then in blue letters, a long, long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away. Dun, dun. That's not how this story begins. Once upon a time, there was a king and queen, and they had a baby, and she was beautiful, and blah, 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 blah. Once upon a time, there was a rabbit who kept eating the Mr. McGregor's, carrots and so on, right? And at the end of those stories, what do you get? Maybe you get a moral, or you get some good advice. You're like, it's some good advice. I'm going to do that. Or, I don't like that advice. I'm going to kick that one to the side of the road. I don't like it. This is not a fairy tale. And I try to do this all the time. I don't do it all the time. But when I talk about Jesus' life, I always talk about these things that happen in His life. This is the account of the birth of Jesus, not the story. Jesus told a lot of stories. We call them parables. These are not stories. This is real history. These are real events that happened to real people when the real eternal Son of God came to this world, descended from humanity, descended from sinners to be with you and me, to save us. This is the fulfillment of God's promises. This is centuries of God making and making and making, and then coming through on His promise to send His Son to rescue humanity for eternity. And that, dear friends, is good news, not good advice. So if they ever do come up with it, maybe you could be the one to develop it. JesusAncestry.com. And you put it on there, Jesus Ancestry, you type it up, Jesus Ancestry, who's in Jesus' family tree? Jesus' family, this is a segment of it, but it continues on, doesn't it? Continues on after that. All those that are made holy, Jesus is not ashamed to call them brothers and sisters. So if you looked up JesusAncestry.com, you'd see this big trunk, Jesus Christ, and you'd see all these branches coming out there. And you know what you would see? You'd see your name. One of those branches put into the family tree of Jesus. Jesus who's not ashamed to call you brothers and sisters, Jesus who brought you into His family, and Jesus who wants to share eternity with you. Dear friends, that is some very interesting news for us. Amen.